To the Divine for providing us such a beautiful place. As the name is Nightingale, uh, I didn't expect it to be that, really that big and so beautifully done. It's all provided for the saints who have to live here, for the people who are chosen by God in this country to do His work. We are doing God's work, and it is God's desire that we are to be looked after, we are to be blessed. We should have no worry of mundane things like a house, we can say of a what you call a shelter and food, money. We should have no such worry because we have to do so many other things now that if we go on spending our energies on these useless pursuits, who is going to do the great work of God, that is the emancipation of human beings? At this juncture, when we know the crisis, great crisis, is facing us in this Kali Yuga, we have to realize that the Divine is working with great understanding of this precarious time, and the dynamism of that divine power is so smooth and so powerful that's working out everything for your comfort, for your peace, for your blessings, and for your powers, by which you can give realization to people. You can assume all the powers that are promised to the saints. In the same way, it is essential for SahajaYogis to know that they have to do a lot to give assistance to allow also the divine power to act through you. Because you are chosen instrument of God. Now, one has to understand a big problem that comes to us when we face Western SahajaYogis. As I am facing you people here, I have to tell you that Western SahajaYogis have different problems from the Indian SahajaYogis. The basic problem is that infrastructure in the West outwardly is wonderful. For example, if you have to telephone to someone, it's very easy here. To communicate, if you have to go somewhere, you can get a car. To get a house, you can get a beautiful house. The infrastructure is very good for, say, material development. This country is very well suited. Because in the West we have had outward development, the development of the shoot and the roots were neglected. And roots are the basis of our existence. So the roots, the infrastructure of roots, if they are weak, the divine power cannot permeate through those roots. And those roots must be looked after and are to be put right. You have to see to it that we put them right through your powers of divine vibrations. Because in India, if you have to develop something, it's a big problem. Supposing you want to take a tractor, there's no road to take it there. If you want to, say, take a ship there, the ship will be standing outside the ports for God knows how many days. If you want to telephone someone, it's always out of order. And it can be disgusting for people who have lived with all these comforts and conveniences here. But to make the divine power flow into the Western people is even more difficult than getting telephones to India. Much more. The reason is the structure needed to permeate this beauty are starved, are weak, are unable to even feel the need for it. But when the tree discovers that it is going to fall down, is going to go out, then it starts looking after its roots and bothering about it. Why? Why are we getting destroyed? What's happening to us? We have not looked after our roots. So now how do we go to our roots? Our source is our spirit. And from our spirit, we get that strength. But the reception becomes weaker if our roots are not all right. And the roots are nothing but simple things which are the 10 commandments. Which are the don'ts and do's. SahajaYoga has one advantage, that nobody is told don't do that. You come along any time, any ideas, any ego, anybody can come in. Raise their kundalini. Then they become enlightened. The light comes into the room and they start seeing all the defects of the room. And then they start repairing it because they see those defects at something outside. Outside you. The identification with those defects falls off and people have changed overnight. We have seen that. But still the structure has to be brought down. Actually, in Australia, things are working out much faster. And somebody told me, oh, Australia is a large village. So this advancement has made people so complicated, so dry, that talking of God itself is something people abhor. Talking of religion is not allowed. I mean, people don't like it in any elite society. If you start talking about religion, they'll tell you off on your faces. You're not supposed to discuss any religion. You can discuss politics as long as you like, but no religion. Can you imagine? So the responsibility of the Sahajogis, first and foremost, is to improve their infrastructure. And that is, we have to pinpointedly understand, lies within us and within the whole of us. The first one was that I never ever put down my foot on any disciplining, on any Sahaja. There's a complete freedom for you to rise above, to go to heaven, or you can take 2 running jumps and go to hell. There was no restriction of any kind on any Sahaja. If you want, you can come. If you don't want, you don't come. At the most, I'll inquire how are you and all that. But there was no compulsion on anyone of any kind. The reason is now you are free people. And freedom that is enlightened should give you proper reasoning to know what is good for you and what is bad for you, and how you should go about yourself. The problem arises, actually all the laws are not for people who are sensible and wise. Not at all, they don't need any laws. But problem arises only when there are people who are licentious, permissive, who have no control over themselves, who have no willpower, those who have bad habits, who try to be destructive. They do not do any constructive work towards the whole. But all the time they are thinking of something destructive, either destroying themselves or destroying the organization, the living organization of Sahajogis. Now, the problem with us is that we are used to this kind of a freedom so far. In the ashram, I never came up to find out how you lived and what was the way we were conducting ourselves. I never inquired as to what people are doing in the ashram. What is the routine they are following? We have ashram which provides for very cheap living and cheap food, all the conveniences. Now God has given you. These are your punyas. He's blessed you. Now let us see what we can do about it. We have to also find out what we are doing about Thanksgiving. We have to formulate certain things to self-discipline ourselves. The disciplining should come from within, willingly, happily, is for your building up and for your growth. Those people who do not want to discipline themselves must be kept out of ashram. Because they are still weak, because the people who are in the ashram are expected to be the best people among all the Sahajogis. Because they are specially blessed. So those who are the best, are specially blessed, have to be the best. And to be that, what are we supposed to do? I mean, they are the generals, for example. Of the generals, if they get up at 11 o'clock in the morning and just rush up to their work, come back home, get angry with everyone and sleep off, what are they going to do in SahajaYoga? So all such people have to come up to a certain maturity of understanding the spirit of SahajaYoga. In the spirit of SahajaYoga, you have to build up yourself according to the requirements of the time. It's a war on. Really, there's a war on. You have no idea. And you have to prepare yourself for that. If people think that this is a good convenience, that we are here. You are destroying yourself. A big chance has come to you. This is all going in the history. All this will be all written down, just like Bible. Everything that has happened to you will be written down. All about you people. Who are the people who are baddies, we should say. The people who do not understand the value of SahajaYoga, the ones who do not pay attention to their building up and to the build up of SahajaYoga, it will be all recorded. Because you are chosen for a work like that. Everybody's name is going to be entered into that. So first of all, we have to understand that a self-discipline which comes from yourself has to be ascertained. For that, certain rules and regulations are to be made in this ashram. And those who are not staying here or in another ashram also the same thing. Those who are not staying in this ashram or that ashram also should follow the same rules and regulations as far as their daily life is concerned. That's how you are going to purify this nucleus. By purifying this nucleus, you will permeate the divine flow of God, the divine love of God into the hearts of people. We have to educate ourselves in a way that is going to help in the construction, work of God's desire. Certain rules and regulations have to be formed. There are some people who are wise who will definitely make some rules and regulations and try to follow them. But there will be many who are weak, who require little boosting up and pulling up. But you have to do it. You have to be trimmed out to become the beautiful pattern of that great event, which is the greatest of all the events of the world, greatest event of the whole creation. And for that, you have to be equipped and educated. And that's why we have to know that the education that you are going to have has to be done with full understanding that you are free to leave or to stay here. There's no compulsion on anyone. But it will be most enjoyable. I'm sure it will be. If you are of a little of that caliber, you will definitely enjoy the whole education of SahajaYoga, which is very important. Because you are faced with a society where the infrastructure of the roots are destroyed. Nobody wants to talk about God. Nobody wants to know about it. Nobody wants to hear about it in such a place. If you have to do something, you have to be exceptional people. And for that, you have to regulate your life, regulate yourself, and grow in a proper way. If you do not try to look after a tree, the tree dies out. If you do not supply water to it and proper nourishment, it will die out. In the same way, whatever you have achieved, if it has to grow, you have to learn how to nourish and bring to the maturity of that personality which is required to construct the design which SahajaYoga wants to implement. We are efficient otherwise, but we are not efficient as SahajaYogis. It's the other way around thing. Now we are talking of the roots. And when we talk of the roots, we have to know that we have to suck in that power which surrounds us. And what is the main thing that is going to suck? That's your spirit. So first of all, the first priority should be to the spirit. All material things are secondary. See how you got the house? Yoga kshema vahamyam. As soon as you got your yoga, kshema is working. All of you have been blessed, but especially this place is a big blessing. So, one has to understand to look after the roots. Our priorities have to change. First and foremost is our spirit. What are we doing to bring the spirit into our attention? We are all the time worried about money, mundane things, useless things. On one side, there are people who are running after things which are of no importance. On the other side, I find people who think they are very spiritual, live in some ethereal world, and do not come in contact with reality. Both things are equally nonsensical. If you think you are very ethereal, you are sadly mistaken. Or if you think you are very materialistic, that is also not correct. You are a spirit which shines in this body. A person who is spiritual is extremely dynamic. Dynamic in the sense that such a person has tremendous powers of activity. He doesn't get normally tired. He doesn't waste his energy into nonsensical talks because he respects himself. There's self-respect. So the education will start immediately as soon as you put your priorities properly. First of all is yourself and then the whole. SahajaYogis must educate themselves in a way to understand, are they selfish or not? For example, some SahajaYogis are very good at sitting for prayers together, but some of them want to do it individually. They are selfish people, absolutely selfish. It's all right once in a while to do your own thing, but if it is available, you must do it with others. It's not only selfish, but it is useless. You may go on doing puja for 10 hours, makes no difference. When you are together, you are in the collective. For example, supposing you are the cells in the heart of the Virat. All of you are the cells of the heart. And you find one cell somewhere twitching. What's going to happen? Is it going to work out the whole function of the heart? All the cells have to work. Not only that, all the cells have to understand each other, and they have to work it out in such a way that they fulfill the function for which they are created. That is the criteria. Otherwise, only one cell starts pulsating somewhere. It may become malignant. And it would be useless, it is destructive. So any one person who is having his individual prayer should know that in SahajaYoga today, no individual exists. It's the whole. It's easy to criticize others. Very easy to criticize others. Because you see, our eyes are outward, not inward. We cannot see inside. But that's not going to help. That's destructive again, very destructive to criticize others. You just don't go just now, John. No, you talk to the boy first of all. Is he ready? Not yet. I'll tell you. You sit down. I'll tell you. Now, if you try to criticize others, you are actually against yourself. Because you will find that another person is also yourself. He is the part and parcel of the same organism which is working it out, the functioning. And how can one cell in the heart be against another cell? Can it be? Or individualistic? It's very destructive for yourself and for others. So everything has to work as the pulsation of the ocean. How it moves in a wave. When some have to rise, they rise, then they go down, another comes up, they rise. In the same way, understanding the movement of God's desire. Now, the roots are spoilt also because we have lost the sense of collectivity. But the worst curse of the Western life, I personally feel, is alcoholism. It's really, I feel that may be one of the reasons why people have become so deadened to dharma. I mean, the amount of things people do here, blindfolded, without even thinking that it is wrong, I can only blame alcoholism. Because I think when you take alcohol, you become so money-minded, you are left with no money at all. And an alcoholic, any amount of money you give is not sufficient, you see. He'll live on a shoestring, but he must have a bottle. He'll sleep on the street, but must have a bottle. I have known some friends of my husband who were alcoholics. They were senior to my husband, getting much more pay. They were from very rich families. And they didn't even have sometimes blankets in their house. You see, an extra blanket if you went to their house. They would have all broken cups and saucers and they had no money. All these bad habits of racing and alcoholism, which is supported by the government and all that. All these bad habits have led people to these insensitivity. Because you see, alcohol is something like polishing all your sensitivities, to your dharma, to right and wrong. Only thing that really upsets people is that they should not do anything illegal, because they'll be caught and put in the prison. But if they can escape even that part, they don't mind doing for alcohol or for any such drugs. So to bring about that insensitivity, we have to know. Now we have a pub just outside here. We must avoid that road, I think. Or one day this pub may run away from here if they go into liquidation. Already there are so many which have gone into liquidation, for your information. I heard last time there were 57 which had gone into liquidation. But I think this time the number is double. The sooner they go into liquidation, the better it would be for this country, for the younger generation that is coming up. All this has worked into our nerves, and our sensitivities are lost to dharma. The only thing, the only hope we have is our spirit, which has enlightened us, which has given us that sensitivity, which has brought us back to light, the truth, the reality, how we have destroyed ourselves. This money-mindedness is also due to this alcohol. I tell you, a man who is a drunkard is very money-minded. Naturally, because he has to have money for drinking. And it's like an ocean he goes on. I mean, you can't drink water in that big beer thing. You can't drink water that much. I really tell you how they can drink such a big thing. I can't understand. I mean, if you give me water in that big thing, I just cannot gulp it down in one sitting. It's beyond me. You see, it's like an ocean it becomes. It goes into some bottomless pit. I think the whole thing is thrown into something, and that requires money, and for that people have to be money-minded. Of course, thank God, no Sahajayogis drink. Now, those who are drinking still, I would request them to put their willpower. Absolutely. And willpower is very simple. If you can move your right to the left 7 times, you can manage it. If not, try 108 times. But you can manage it. Get rid of this nonsensical habit, which has killed your dharma, which has killed your personality, which has made you a slave of all these nonsensical things, so get out of it. For Sahajayogis, I have never put a bandhan on that you don't drink, but you just stop it. But you can understand what a bad thing it is to drink. I mean, you don't see your sisters, you don't see your mother. These relationships that have developed here is so queer, so strange. You can't believe it that human beings can have such relationships. But that is because you are drunk. I mean, how will you know your sister and your mother even? And that's why one of the things we have to understand that all bad habits we have to give up A to Z. Worst is drinking, of course, but there are minor bad habits also. Now, Christ has talked about murmuring souls. And about them, he's been so angry that he said that these people I spit out of my mouth. He said, those who are hot, I'll manage them. And those who are cold, they are mine. But those who are in between, I'll spit them out of my mouth. Of course, I don't use such language, but this is his language, which he has said. They are repulsive people, the murmuring people, who are in the ashram for their convenience. And they are having their own secret things, and they are talking sometimes against SahajaYoga, against this, why that, why this. These are very destructive people, and beware of them. As it is, we have to look after the very delicate thing that are the roots. And then these people are of no use to us, absolutely of no use, who start sitting down and saying that, oh, I'm doing this kind of another thing, and I'm trying another thing, and we have this another guru. Whatever is wrong is wrong. This is not a cult, you must know. SahajaYoga is not a cult. It is your evolution, is your natural thing that's happening to you. It's not a cult where there is nothing like bad and good. Every guru is good, every pub is good, every madman is good. It's not like this. In a cult, everybody is good. You see, there's nothing like bad thing. Everything is good. What's wrong? That's cult. But in natural processes, we have discretion. And we know what is good and what is bad. If you have seen a sunflower, it knows which way to turn its face. The trees know which way to turn their faces, which way to move. The roots know where to go. how to go towards the sources of water. They just don't go towards the deserts. That is also good. So this is not a cult. You must know that. This is not where everything is all right as long as you give some money, or as long as you are a member, or as long as you think you belong to some sort of a organization. No, it is absolutely, there's no compromise. There is no compromise with darkness, with untruth, with anything that is destructive for human beings. We cannot compromise. As in evolution, there is no compromise. One has to understand that we are human beings and we have freedom. That if you want, you can get along with compromises. But as far as evolution is concerned, you will be out. You won't be there. You cannot pass through the gates of Agya Chakra. You will be thrown on sides. You will be thrown into places where you don't want to go. You cannot pass through that. If you have to pass through that gate, then you must know that there is no compromise of any kind. You have to come up to a certain maturity and a certain adherence to the truth and identification with your spirit. Like people will say, Mother, they are also good people. No, they are not. If they are not, they are not. Of course, out of compassion, one may think of giving them emancipation, improving them. But today they are not good people. Today they are not all right. Tomorrow they may be. That's a different point. If they are not good today, they are not good today means today for us they are not good. We don't talk of tomorrow. But to listen to them, or to agree with them, or to support them, or to be with them is anti-God activity. Because moment to moment there is destruction working, and in the same way there is construction going on. Any moment when you find anybody who is against, they are not with us, we cannot compromise. Especially for people who are living in an ashram. I have seen that person coming from Rajneesh walks into the ashram with all his horrible dress and everything and with his mala and stays in a SahajaYoga ashram. There is no compromise with such dirty people. They are not fit to enter into our ashrams. These are temples, not temples of ordinary people, but of realized souls who are chosen by God for God's work. And we don't want anyone of that kind to come inside. If they have to meet, they can come to Caxton Hall, it's all right. There every Dick, Tom, Harry is there. It's all right. But not in the ashram. Not in the ashram. You should not allow anybody to tamper the holiness and the auspiciousness of your ashram. For us, holiness is the highest thing. If you are not holy people, you cannot do any work of God. Believe me, you cannot. You have to be holy men. You have to be prophets. And you have to lead a life of holiness. If you are unholy, you are no good. So, the whole working out is in a different line. The efficiency of being holy. And holy person is efficient by itself. Jason just wrote a letter to me saying that, Mother, it's difficult. Just now we don't know whether we are going to get a house or not. It's going to be difficult. So far we have no idea. I just gave a bandhan. See, just holiness working it out. And here you are. That's how holiness is going to work. The purity of heart, the purity of love. But love doesn't mean run after somebody who is a Rajneesh's fellow or something. So anybody coming from any guru should be banned from the ashrams. Till he comes to SahajaYoga in Caxton Hall, cleansed there properly, washed, bathed and shaven and shorn, then he can enter. One has to be very careful on this point. So I'm making it extremely clear to you that in the night about 12 o'clock a phone comes in, SOS, Mother, we have 3 people from Muktananda. Send them back to Muktananda. They have been with them for 12 years. All right, let them carry on for 3 years more. The other day we had somebody who came who was with him for 12 years. And he said, I have become a recluse. I can't think about anything. I have no money. I have lost everything. I said, go back to him. He said, 12 years I have been with him. What did he get? Now, if he has to come to SahajaYoga, I told him, you are going to Australia. All right, you get your realization. You be certified by them. And then, only certified people can enter into the premises of our ashram. But certified people have to be extremely beautiful people, very sweet-tongued. Better try to read dictionary now and find out the sweetest way of addressing people. All slangs and all words which are full of thorns must be dropped. All the flowery words must be chosen. You are not a hypocrite because you are flowers after all. You have to be fragrant, no doubt. But for whom? For Sahajogis, not for outsiders. There are people who despise Sahajogis. I have seen some Sahajogis are like that and are very friendly with other people. They are frightened of other people and are not kind to Sahajogis. With Sahajogis, you have to be very kind. But that does not mean with outsider you should not be. You should be. Because they are seekers. You have to be kind to them. You have to be nice to them. There's nothing wrong in being nice and flowery. That's not hypocritical. Am I a hypocrite? It's not hypocritical to be nice to people. On the contrary, with others you should not be angry. But in a way you should tell them. For example, such people walk in, you should say, I'm sorry, we cannot have people from Muktananda here. If you want, you can come to Caxton Hall. There's one way of talking. There's a way of saying it's very embarrassing, but we are sorry, it's awkward, we are not allowed. Best thing is to write down all the rules and regulations. As soon as they come, hand it over to them. Let the blame come to me. I don't mind. That's how things have to work out. About minor things and all that, I think we'll have to sit down, make rules and regulations. But the major thing is meditation together. I have told you before also that I have myself lived in Mahatma Gandhi's ashram. And if I tell you the conditions there, you'll be amazed. I mean, I would never want my children to be like that. I used to think Mahatma Ji is rather cruel on people. But the way people had to live in an ashram, absolutely Spartan methods. So much so that even a villager would be running away from such a thing. I mean, it was so too much for him to live in those conditions. You had to clean your latrines, clean the latrines of all the guests that are there with the buckets and things like that. Can you imagine? And all those things we have done. And he said that unless and until you get rid of these things, you will not understand what the untouchables are like. So he made us learn all that, you see. So it was all right for me. I'm quite a tough person. But with others, I used to think it's too much. For people say Maharaja's son's coming and all that with so many servants they have, and they suddenly made to clean the latrines of the guests. It was too much for them. But he made them. And once he asked somebody to sleep on the ground. He said, I cannot sleep on the ground, on the mat. I'm used to a bed. He said, then you go and sleep outside. For 1 month you sleep outside and you'll be all right. And there were snakes, you see, in the grounds. And snakes never bit anyone. That's one thing good about them. They never bit anyone. But you see, the fellow didn't know what to do, see, where to sleep. So he would come inside and sleep on the mat again. He thought first it would be nice, comfortable on a grass, but then he saw the snakes, you see, crawling around him. So he walked back. And it was so in the schools also, the such trainings were there before, that children were asked to go around the whole cricket ground, you see. If they would not make their beds in the morning, they were asked to take the beds on their back and go around the whole cricket ground in the schools, you see. But these things must be there. For, you see, untidiness is something I can't understand, untidiness at this age. If you are at this age like this, what will happen to you when you will be of my age? I just can't imagine. I mean, how can you then, I mean, what will be your shape? I just can't think of a person that at this age, how can you be untidy? Untidiness comes from untidy mind, I think. And to be untidy is a curse, absolute curse, you know. You are absolutely a lost person. Putting everything under the big curtain and hiding this under this. This is not the way to live. I mean, this is such a small thing that I don't know how to tell you, but I mean, we were in Gandhi Ashram. We were not allowed to have any sweeper or any cleaner or anything. And everything had to be spick and span. Even the leaves had to be clean. Can you imagine? I've heard that some of the ashrams of these gurus are kept extremely clean. Because people are punished, not physically, but financially. The fine is 50 pounds for 1 liter falling out of your hands. 50 pounds. Finished. That they have done in Singapore, they do like that. If you drop 1 cigarette anywhere, you are charged 50 pounds. So people are extremely careful. But we are Sahajayogis. We are not to learn it through fines and strictness and fear. But we have to learn dharma through our freedom and understanding. By respecting ourselves, we have to live. Now sharing is very important. There are some Sahajayogis who do not know how to share. For example, food. You must share your food. I have told you that those who do not share food should not live in an ashram. And such people are not going to be called as Sahajayogis at all. You see, if you are sick, it's all right. In a house, for an Indian house, I would say, the food is cooked for all of us and we all eat. Whatever the mother cooks for all the children, they don't have a separate cereal in the morning. Which one will you have? I will have this one. Another one, I'll have this one. Third one will think, what will I have today? What is there to think and why to waste your energy in all these choices? It's only ego. Nothing but an ego. I've seen it, people having big, these menu cards and reading them for half an hour and coming down, what I'm going to have. Better have all of you the same. What is there? The tongue is the same. And the mouth is the same. And it's going to be the same. What is there so special about deciding what will I have today? What have you done today that you should have something special? What is such a special thing about it? Wasting your energy. Oh, I will have this. I will have that. Even I have seen when we Sahajayogis used to go for our dinners and all that. Everybody would order, I'll have this. Now imagine 80 persons going to a restaurant. Everybody ordering something else. No wonder the people would not accept us there because all the people who served us must have gone mad. It's all right, take it easy. Burnt yourself with that sari you need not bring the cup. Poor thing. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. So, this is what it is, that we should not have all these choices. Whatever is cooked, by the grace of God, praise it that we've got the food. We eat the food with all joy and happiness. And if anybody is sick, he can cook for that person. That's all. But so much attention is paid to food. What's the use? We are so much worried about these useless things. And after eating all that food also, the tongue is so horrible, just like a snake. While snake eats only grass. It doesn't eat all these cereals and all that. It eats grass. But our tongues are just like snakes. When we eat all the best things with selections, this, that, all things we do. Clothes we'll wear with selections. We'll be particular about this and particular about that. But we are not particular about our roots. That's the point. We have to be particular about our roots. Because we all have to grow. We have to become great Sahajayogis. Out of you, great prophets have to come. And for that there has to be single-minded, complete devotion to understanding that you are realized souls. If you have to go after other gurus and all that, you go ahead. You can go ahead and do what you like with yourself. If you have no discrimination of vibrations, you can do what you like. But if you have, then use it and know for yourself that you are your own guru. You don't need anybody. Anything else like that about your roots, you have to understand. That it is you who has to improve yourself, it is you who matters and nobody else to me and to God. It is you who has to be such that you should look after yourself the way you look after your clothes, look after your food, look after every choice of yours, whether you will be that choice that God would like to have. Make yourself like that God will pick you up. Oh, this is my best flower, with the best fragrance. This is what I want you to do. So when we make rules for this ashram, it's a challenge. It's a challenge for my children to come up to it. I have known many gurus who came to me who are good gurus, told me that, why have you given them realization? Who are they? According to them, you are all Dick, Tom and Harry. What have they done? We have done so much of tapasyas, we've done this, we have done that. Why have you given them realization to this food? Now the tapasya has started. We have to be tapasvis. We have to be people with penance. And we should be happy to do. But that penance made people egoistical, hot-tempered. This is going to make you very sweet, nice, and good and joyful. That's the difference between the two. If I had asked you to do this tapasya before realization, you all would have been standing with one stick in the hand, hitting everyone who passed by. Of course, you would be good, but the rest of them would be hit by you. So thank God, now the tapasya has started with understanding that you are going to develop yourself to this level. And thus, I'm sure this ashram, which is a blessing of God upon us, will prove worthy of this and create a new world. The time has started. The breakthrough has started. I can assure you it has started. Believe me. There are ways and methods which are working out, which are very interesting, which I would like you to understand that there's a new style is developing. You are going to get lots of Sahajayogis. But first of all, you should be such that they should see you and see that the facets of these people are like sparkling diamonds. They should not find any faults in you. I bless you with all my heart, with all the powers that I have, with everything that I have. I bless you. May God make you the best flowers of the whole universe. May God bless you. But today is my wedding anniversary. And that is how we are here. And my husband is also going to come. And we have to decide now how many are going to get married this year. Except for one or two, most of the marriage has come up very successfully. And those who have been also married before and got remarried in SahajaYoga have come out to be very good companions. They have improved in their relationships. It's much better now. And everything is working out in a beautiful way, and lots of realized children are being born. And we are being strengthened by their advent. So this auspicious day today is just after Palm Sunday, when Christ was received with all jubilation. And today is the time when we have to understand that married life itself is a big yajna, it's a big homa, it's a big havana in which we have to adjust, burn off our angularity, and we have to appreciate and understand each other and cope with so many things and make it a beautiful, what you call the beautiful cradle for the children who have to come, and also a sustaining thing. Marriage is a challenge and is very sustaining, very helpful to understand yourself. It's like a reflection that you see every minute. If you know how to really reflect about yourself, because after realization you can do that and see for yourself how you are going about, whether you are losing your vibrations or gaining. It's a challenge. And every time you do anything in marriage, after realization, you progress. How you handle the situation, how you work it out, how you understand, everything is very important. And all these things work out so beautifully if you know that you are a realized soul and that marriage is a havana. And those people who teach don't get married and all that are absolutely anti-SahajaYogis. You have nothing to do with such people who talk don't get married, like Brahma Kumaris and things like that. Not to get married and do what? All kinds of nonsensical things. Marriage has been established by God. It is an auspicious thing and is to be respected. All these ideas must be given up. That marriages are not important. Marriages are very important, but not more than SahajaYoga. Marriages are important because they help SahajaYoga, not because they go against SahajaYoga. So more time must be spent with the SahajaYoga activities. Both of you should work it out. And not that we should have a nice holiday together or sort of a thing like that. You'll never enjoy. You cannot enjoy a holiday without SahajaYogis being there. Now these are your holidays, these are your festivals, these are your enjoying places. I know you enjoy here much more than anywhere else, isn't it? So that's what it is. So why should we go for any special holidays separately and this and that and become miserable and come back with all catches? So I'm thankful to you for arranging this program today on an auspicious day. For me, it was the auspicious day that I married Mr. Srivastava, and it's an auspicious day for all of you, that we have to understand that marriage has to be done in a proper way, in a SahajaYoga way, and is to be lived in a SahajaYoga manner. I think Mr. Srivastava will be coming now. Before that, I better finish this lecture. And you have to find out about the food. Just call the boy. क्या हाल है तुम लोग का? ठीक है? तुम पे तो आ गया सहयोग का तेज मुंह पे. इसका क्या हाल है? और क्या? फिर मेरी बात नहीं सुनते हो ना? ब्लड प्रेशर तो जाना चाहिए. और ये इनका क्या नाम? इनका क्या नाम? बहुत सुंदर, बहुत अच्छी लड़की है. You understand my things? You like them? Good. सीख रहे. Now, if the servant is there, I'll just ask him. Does he come? Kajan Singh? Oh, some of Georgian style, isn't it, Gavin? It's very difficult to make these small little designs. I don't know how they make it. We have got another one, that's a different thing, but these are done there on the thing, isn't it? Gavin? Very delicate. You see, this plate is all right, it's simple. But to do these things, you see, very delicate. Huh? This is actually Georgian, I tell you. I've seen in a Georgian house a design like this, a pattern like this. Is it, Gavin? Is it as old as that? It's Victorian. But the style is, the design is, I saw in that Georgian house the same type of thing. Only thing, these big blocks were not there. You see, the delicacy is spoiled by these big blocks. But it's very difficult to make these things. Yeah? You should do that little painting with gold, you see, so they'll be surprised. हमारे घर में किया है ना इन लोग ने. Okay. So, any questions? Or should I go and see the place? All right. Where are my shoes gone?
How do we prove that exists?
They are incarnations. Yeah. Of what?
Well, that reincarnation itself exists.
Huh?
That reincarnation exists.
They ask you a question that whether there is reincarnation or not. Yes, it is.
Well, how? What do you say?
I mean, Christ himself has said that I will come back to you. That's the proof. But otherwise also, you see, there are many cases now that have proved that there is reincarnation. That people have been talking about previous lives, and when people went and tried to find out, they have verified. It's been proved now. I mean, people have accepted, those who read these books, they know there is reincarnation. You see, people remember about things, about previous lives, but it's not so important. You should say it's not important to know. You see, they will hook you on such questions. What I'm saying, they will try to hook you on such questions, which is not so important. छाया इधर आओ, क्या हुआ तुम्हारा? और मेरे लिए एक सर दर्द हो गया. Anniversary, and we both want to thank you all for celebrating this, and also the opening of this place was done on the same day, and we both are very much thankful. And I hope you are all going to enjoy this place and enjoy the community living and sharing of joy. Thank you.
that.